As I think about it, and what the president has an impact on is fiscal responsibility. As I take a look at the ballooning debt that we've got going on, I believe that fiscal responsibility would be one place where I would pay closer attention.
Welcome back, everyone, to another great episode of Mint Money. We're talking about all things personal finance in the great state of Michigan. Today, we are joined by a special guest, Pavel. Pavel, welcome. What all do you do at TriStar?
I'm the president and CEO.
So what does that look like on a daily basis? What are you doing?
Wait a minute, that was not on the list. I'm basically managing resources. I stepped into a position at the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
And it's a tremendous learning experience for me because all of a sudden throughout my career I went from doing things and building things and analyzing things, and all of a sudden everybody's doing the work.
Sure.
And I'm providing direction, guidance, having a lot of conversation, providing support, and just making sure that everybody's successful. And if everybody's successful, therefore TriStar is successful.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
And so far, so good. Things are going really well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So far, so now, also helps that the stock market has been doing really well this year. So from that standpoint, we're doing well. From a sales standpoint, we're doing well. Overall, people seem to be happy. I feel pretty good as to where we are.
And that's fantastic to hear. And all about today, the big elephant in the room for the stock market is all about the election.
Yep.
The election just a few short weeks away. And so we couldn't think of a better person to invite on than Pavel, because before becoming president and CEO, you have quite a historic investment background, not only being chief investment officer at TriStar, but then you also have a detailed, rich history of investments. And then also you worked in Chemical Bank's treasury department, or?
Yeah. So I was at Chemical Bank almost 20 years. All 20 years in the treasury department. The last 10, I was the corporate treasurer.
Nice. And so we, as you can imagine, we couldn't think of a better person to have on to go talk about elections, investing, than yourself.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
As I said, now in my new role, I don't do as much of it as I used to, but I still read it plenty, and I certainly have opinions.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that's perfect. And I think you should also be known that Pavel is a returning guest of Mint Money. So you are already in a very small club of other very well like-minded guests. But besides that point, I know you're originally from the Czech Republic. If you could hop on a plane right now to anywhere in the world, where would it be and why? It could also be somewhere domestically too.
That's a great question. I've traveled plenty. I'd go back to Czech Republic.
Sure.
I was there in 2019, and I have to say, and that was my first time in 15 years. As I was going through immigration, so I couldn't really travel outside the United States, and immigration legally, by the way.
Sure.
And I couldn't travel outside the United States, and I went to visit in July with my family, and went over there, and the place is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And it's been such a huge change, and a true testament of what a free market, a private property, how big of a difference it makes. So during communism, nobody owned anything, and you had these gray, apartment buildings. Everything was kind of gray and dirty, and you get in there, and the houses, the buildings are gorgeous. They're brand spanking new because people now own it.
Yeah.
And so it was fantastic. I was there in July, and I came back here, and I love living in Midland, Michigan. I was a little depressed, so 3 months later I went back.
Yeah.
And so when the pandemic happened, my family keeps going back, and I always have something going on, so I haven't been in a while. So yes, I'd go back to Czech Republic in a heartbeat if I had a chance.
Along that line, and you mentioned it yourself, right? You grew up in Czechoslovakia, right? Under communism, right?
Yeah.
We hear today, people talk about how different things are today or how divisive our political environment is. You actually witnessed some of the transition, right? From communism into democracy. Do you see any, I don't know, folks say it's so different today and how divisive we are. Do you see any correlation between the two, or?
Not much. When you think about it, what was happening in Czechoslovakia, had to do with some politics.
Sure.
But it had to do more with nationalism.
Okay.
Slovakians wanted to have their own country.
Sure.
ironically, when you actually looked at, so Czechoslovakia used to have 15 million people. 10 million were in the Czech Republic, and 5 million were in Slovakia. But when you look at the GDP of the country, 75% of it was coming from Czech Republic, and only 25 was coming from Slovakia. So, but they had their national pride, and they wanted to be a separate country.
Sure.
But if you're a Czech, you look at it and going, hey, we're providing more of the GDP than the population. So economically, it's advantageous. It was advantageous for Czechs to have a separate country versus Slovakia. And you can take a look at it now and Czechia. Well, it went from Czechoslovakia to Czech Republic.
Sure.
Now it's called Czechia. I'm having difficulty saying Czechia.
Yeah. It's like Turkey is now Turkey.
Turkey, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Now, I understand why that is, because when you look at Europe in general, there is really no something republic.
Sure.
It's all just one name. What's different here of what's going on, you have a ideology problem in the United States. So that's why it's different. And there's a common denominator because both sides are trying to protect their way of life and their sets of beliefs. But there is just the friction between what those things are.
Right.
And so the one thing to learn from the spirit of Czechoslovakia is, the dialogue was important.
Okay.
Calm heads prevailed.
Right.
The rhetoric wasn't as strong. It was very pragmatic and very logical, as opposed to what we have going on here. Is people are so set in their own ways they refuse to see the other other side. That's why I think it's different.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, and for a lot of people too, here in the U.S., I'm sure they get a lot of information from the media. And as we're all very well aware, some media could be slanted one way or another. And so when people see polls can be a really good way to go get information, but it could be a big difference if one poll is made up of 15,000 people across the whole U.S. versus 25 people in my little neighborhood in Auburn, Michigan.
Yeah.
And so, what are your own thoughts about political polling? I'd like to see the information myself, but sometimes it's so tough to get unbiased information.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, polling there's issues with polling, right? You saw it in 2016. You saw it in 2020. What's interesting to me, and I've been thinking about it, it got progressively worse.
Sure.
The accuracy has gotten worse.
Yeah.
And the issue truly is, in my opinion, is like it's more of a sentiment measurement, and I don't look at it as much as I used to, because you've got biases. Well, as you said it, you've got biases, you've got the numbers, you've got statistical significance, you've got who's asking the questions.
Sure.
You have all of these things that are skewing it. And what's interesting over the last call it 8 years is that you actually have people who don't want to give you the answer.
Oh, right.
People may be associated with one party or the other, but they just don't want anybody to know, so they don't say. So I look at polls now. And what do we, basically it's a toss-up at this point.
Yeah.
You would think, based on all of the different polls, and everybody's got all sorts of analysis, but I ultimately look at it as, it's sentiment, and it's going to be close is how I look at it.
Yeah, so possibly with a grain of salt, because I know for myself, I've gotten a lot of unsolicited text messages, unsolicited calls, and for myself, I see, I don't know you. If it's important, there's probably going to be a voicemail associated with it. But I know that's how a lot of polling is done. There's actually some very prominent financial bits and pieces of information that gets published on a national scale. And this one particular polling thing doesn't relate as much to the election, but more to financial metrics. They have to reach out to 12,000, 13,000 people just to get 600 results, and they're calling people on landlines. And there, it's pretty easy to go see with a specific poll like that. It's pretty tough because you're thinking about people who still have landlines, who pick up the phone, and then you think, okay, are they giving the best piece of information? I saw another thing about polls for a second. I saw one poll that a third of Americans believe that vampires are real.
Yeah, right.
And maybe they are. I don't know.
Yeah.
What I find interesting too about polling, I don't know, have either of you ever been polled?
No.
Mm-mm. I have.
Have you?
Via text, and I immediately go, stop.
Me too. So that's what, the other thing, I've met very few people that have actually ever participated in a poll. Yeah. In which case, I've always sort of questioned the legitimacy of them. Obviously, they're relatively accurate, right? I mean, we know that it's sort of a toss-up. I mean, that's easy to say, right?
But you take a look at 2016. I mean, all the polls were showing a Hillary was leading.
Oh, yeah.
And ultimately, what the outcome was. So
Sure.
So, and that was the first time when you take a look at 2020, the polls were favoring Biden a lot more than what the reality
was much closer.
Reality was. So it was much closer. So you take a look at this situation, and as you said, I think it's a toss-up, and I don't know that you can. I'm sure we're gonna get on the topic of stock market or whatever, but it's just one of those things that you just can't panic and look at it and then start making investment decision based on polls.
Right, and that's a great segue because since 1928, the S&P 500 has only declined 4 times during an election year. You would have 1932, the Great Depression, 1940, World War II, 2000, the dot-com bubble, and then 2008 during the global financial crisis. So given those facts, why do you think so many people get anxiety about their investments in 401ks, particularly in election years? And how can investors see through misinformation and sort of manage that anxiety?
I think that as you look at it, so all of the declines in the stock market I just mentioned, they were event specific.
Right.
So it had nothing to do with politics. They were event specific. I think the reason is when people are looking at their 401ks, you have a very strong sentiment. Sure. And when you look at, and I think, Will, you mentioned that, you look at media, and a lot of people have what I call a confirmational bias. Okay, so they believe in one thing, and then they only listen and pay attention to one thing, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is that people are paying closer attention, and I'm going to generalize here, but they either have Fox News on the whole time or they have CNN on the whole time.
Sure.
And Fox News is telling you that if Democrats win, this is what's going to happen to the economy, this is what's going to happen to the stock market. CNN is the exact opposite, right? And I don't mean to be picking on any of these, but this is just the statement, for example. And so when people are looking at that, people are then making a decision based on what they think is going to happen. So it goes back to the polling, and they go, "Oh, Harris is going to win." So now you guys said, "Oh my God, this is going to be awful," the stock market, and so they panic and they react on emotions as opposed to fundamentals.
Right.
And adding to your point too, people can toss up policies on the left or the right, but once they actually get into office or stay in office, trying to enact those policies, that's a whole nother 9 yards.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean that's we know we have checks and balances in government.
Of course.
We're talking about interest rates. We talk, Fed, the Fed, who is controlling the short-term interest rates, and then controlling money supply. They're supposed to be apolitical,
right?
Right. I mean, I think I got that right. Powell was appointed by Trump, right?
Yeah.
And he's still under Biden administration,
right?
So they're apolitical group that they are actually helping to steer the economy through the ups and downs, regardless of who's in the politics.
And I think that's important too, right? That you do have someone just with making common sense decisions for the best of the country,
absolutely,
right? And for our economy. Yeah.
And so relating to policies, now this is where it gets a little more on the opinion perspective.
Yeah.
What policies do you think either presidential hopeful candidate should prioritize to really help with stability? Now, stability is very broad, and it could be very opinionated towards, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. But in your opinion, what would be a good first step?
As I think about it, and what the president has an impact on is fiscal responsibility. As I take a look at the ballooning debt that we've got going on, I believe that fiscal responsibility would be one place where I would pay closer attention. I would also be looking at policies that stimulate innovation and a workforce development and workforce growth. Because in order for the U.S. to continue to be the pinnacle of innovation and cutting edge or whatever, you want to find policies that are stimulating that, so we are ahead of everybody else. And quite frankly, and this is just my naive wish, I would just hope that whoever is in there, maybe we calm down a little bit and start being a little more kind and a little bit more respectful, and to limit the rhetoric and start talking common sense like human beings, as opposed to some of the stuff that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of people. Just making common sense decisions that make sense for everyone, not just for, because there is division, right? And it's about 50-50.
Yeah, right.
And if we can, I think in general, I find that we are closer together than we are further apart. Like, I don't find that there is that deep divide. I guess politically there is, but in general, I find that most people want to do right and do the right thing and be good.
I agree, Kevin. The one thing what's interesting to me, though, is that it used to be that you could have a conversation and you could openly debate the topics, right? And now you're almost afraid to have that conversation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because of the labels that are associated with it. So now the dialogue, the different points of view are not necessarily being discussed, right? And I don't want to get on a tangent here, but I was thinking about that. Is like, I go back to the confirmational bias, and I make it a point that I read everything.
Sure.
Okay, because I want the whole spectrum.
Correct.
But I think I'm in the minority here.
Yeah.
And so now you have the situation where you have the confirmational bias. You're watching or reading just the things that confirm whatever you believe in. And then you have conversations only with people who believe in the same thing.
Right.
And because of how divisive it is right now, then you basically refuse to or don't want to discuss with the other side. So you have absolutely no way of maybe seeing it from another point. And I think that's why, even though we don't feel it, but we're not talking.
Right.
We're not talking as much as we should be to really understand. We avoid the topic. Therefore, you're not open up to the possibility that there may be some kind of a compromise in the middle.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And being someone that has a great interest in history, right?
Yeah.
And I think in order to, like, whenever you're studying history, you do have to look at it from many different angles to come to a conclusion about what was done right, what could have been done differently. But folks have to be very careful of that confirmation bias, because if you're looking for what you want to find, you're going to find it.
Absolutely.
Right? You almost have to do the opposite and try to prove yourself wrong, right? And look for what the other side believes and try to confirm that to come to that conclusion.
Absolutely.
Yep.
No, that's perfect. And so post-election now, post-November 3rd, I believe that's the date. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That was 5th,
The
wasn't
5th,
it?
Is it the
I think.
5th?
Yeah.
Wrong date. Might have to go circle the right date now on my calendar. But besides the point.
Although you can vote early.
Yes.
Yeah. For those folks in Midland, I want to say it's the end of this month here in October. You can vote at the Great Sadow Library.
Is that right?
The weekend
okay.
prior to the election.
Yeah.
So post-election, what can investors expect 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 12 months?
So typically pre-election, you have a lot of volatility because of what we were talking about. Is this people paying attention and then making a decision based on what they think is going to happen. So the one thing that you see post-election is that the volatility shrinks, because what's driving the stock markets, obviously the fundamentals and everything is associated with it, but they're also emotions, and also the unknown. The stock market doesn't like the unknown, and so where there is the unknown, you've got a lot more volatility, because one day, again, circling back to the polling, one day you had a poll and you go, and then the next day, some other poll comes in, wait a minute, and so it's just kind of flying all over the place. What typically happens shortly after election, or once the results are known, then you kind of know what you're dealing with, and so volatility shrinks. And the beauty about United States and how ingenious the people of this country are is they just want to know what the rules are.
Sure.
And then they figure out how to make money, how to prosper
Right.
Within those rules. And that's why you typically see a reduced volatility. Now, barring any unforeseen, recessions or some of, even though I don't necessarily see anything like that on the horizon,
Right.
things seem to be going okay. I think you're gonna see less volatility and positive returns the 12 months after the election.
Yep.
What I like too with the election being in November is it leads right into the end of the year. And I don't know about you two, but I know within my household, the spending is strong, especially for children's stuff. And so
It's a little too strong
Yeah.
every once in a while.
Yeah.
isn't
and
it?
so it's
Right.
almost what you call on Wall Street a Santa Claus rally. And so it's almost
Oh,
nice.
right.
Election happens, maybe there's a bit of volatility, but then hey, companies and stocks, they're selling a lot of stuff. Black Friday happens, Christmas time happens, and it's a big boom for
Yeah.
the retail side of the economy.
Although you could argue, Will, is that people know it's coming, so they're probably already priced in.
Sure.
Possibly.
I mean, let's face it, right? The stock market is, to a certain degree, trying to predict what is going to happen 6 months from now. So, to a certain degree, you can say, unemployment is low. People,
Right.
seem to be doing well. So you would think that there's going to be pretty strong holiday season, and they may be already baked in. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we can hope for maybe a little more of a surprise, possibly. I don't know. Maybe there's I know for myself in our household, there's some YouTube content creators that are pretty popular amongst
sure.
the age demographic of my children that are, hey, things are going well for them. They're releasing their own merch. I just saw some in Target the other day.
Yeah.
And so, hey,
Yeah.
good for Target. Good
What
for
are they?
them.
What are they watching?
So there's a YouTube channel called Miss Rachel. I believe
Okay.
I think it's called Miss Rachel. There's a more longer title with it, but she's a content creator, and it's
Yeah.
all really good educational creation content for. They have different age demographics, and so whether it's 0 to 12 months, 12 24, 24 36, or higher,
Okay.
and hundreds of millions of views. And these videos are like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, so on and so forth. And she's really popular. Now she's selling some merch too. And so she's continuing to do a really good job. And she's been featured at Good Morning America, some other really good places.
yeah.
But it's basically a really good way to, not that there's anything wrong with Disney or Mickey Mouse. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love everything Disney's been able to go create. But to be able to go have good educational content that's proven to be good, it's
Yeah.
certainly a nice blessing.
No doubt. I mean, I have a 12-year-old boy, and
Right.
we've gone through the same exact thing.
Oh, yeah.
And you're talking, the term merch, Kevin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're no longer saying merchandise. It's
Right,
a,
it
it's
is
merch.
merch.
And they're
It's
running,
the merch drop.
running around,
Absolutely.
selling things. But yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly some things to look forward to within my own household as my children get a little bit older. And so
Yeah. Along that line with YouTube and sort of segueing into learning a little bit more about you personally, Good. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that YouTube channel. It's these guys sort of in their mid-20s, early 30s that golf and have a lot of fun, and they play with Bryson DeChambeau and all these different guys.
Yeah,
and it's a really good time. But along the level of getting to know you a little bit more personally, we know that you do your series, I've Been Thinking.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about these days, and what can we expect to see on that upcoming?
I actually don't. You know what I've been thinking lately?
Yeah.
How is AI gonna impact the financial industry?
Sure.
And how can you leverage AI? And one of the things I've been thinking about is when we do financial plans, right? I mean, and you guys know how big of a pain it is to collect all of the data
sure.
to try to understand what your expenses are, what your goals are. You've got credit card statements, you've
Right.
got checking accounts or all of that. And I thought to myself, wouldn't that be great if there's some way that I can just upload, 1 year worth of transactions. And in my family, we use credit cards.
Sure.
And then we pay them off at the end. At the end of the month, so we got 2 credit cards, one that we use on the internet just in case so it gets stolen, and then one that we use at a store, right? if I could just take that data and have AI analyze it, put it in a bucket,
Right.
and so then we can import that information into our
Sure.
financial planning software, and so it's just so easy, and then you can every single year do that.
Sure. Update it.
And it gets it analyzed, and it back tests your financial plan.
Sure.
And so you can modify it, so you're a lot more active in how you're doing it. I think that's got to be something that.
Well, let me tell you something. I'll tell you both. Big update, and this is terrific. Yesterday, okay, I was reviewing our budget, Jody and I's budget, and I thought to myself, I want to know how much I'm spending on dining out, because I feel like that's one category. It's not like a fixed number, and you can get off really easy with that number. So I took our statement and I copied all of our transactions for the last 90 days, dropped it into an Excel spreadsheet, then took just a couple of columns from that spreadsheet, dropped it into AI, and said, how much am I spending on dining out each month?
Yeah.
And it came back and spit my result back to me.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you. I think AI, I think it was Bill Gates that said it's going to be the most disruptive technology of our lifetime.
Very much
And
so.
you think about someone like Bill Gates saying that, right? Who has, to this point, maybe created some of the most, at least, disruptive technology in our lifetime. It is going to be a game changer in finance and many different things, right? But
And I agree. I agree with you. And it's been an interesting exercise for me to start thinking, and then tying it back to the stock market. Tying it back to NVIDIA.
Sure. Right.
Is NVIDIA properly valued?
Right.
Is it the next?
Sure.
Cisco systems of the early 2000s, right? When it was just or Intel of this high flying because of all the possibilities with switches or what have you.
Sure.
And I think it was you, Will, who told me that Cisco system has not gotten to the levels that they were in 2000. So I think there is, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think that our minds are going kind of wild as to how you can apply AI in what it is that we do.
Yeah.
And we're using ChatGPT to write funny emails or whatever.
Yeah.
But to your point, you started using it for analytical purposes.
Yeah.
I use it for just to gathering information, just, different things. And so our minds are thinking about how can we apply it.
Sure.
But it is also a little scary.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'll tell you something. So you guys kind of send me these questions, right?
Right.
And I'm looking at them like, man, these are tough questions. And I was just sitting in my office and I was thinking, I wonder how the ChatGPT would react to this.
Yeah.
Right. I said, because a lot of these are personal.
Sure.
Right. And like opinion based.
Right.
And so I fully expect that. So I was going to copy and paste. I fully expect saying something like, well, I can't answer this because I'm not you or whatever. This thing spit out these politically correct answers.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it and I was shaking my head and I could easily just recite everything that came out of it.
And it would sound
genuine like as I did it. Now here's the kicker. One of the questions, we were talking about what the policies should be. And it had, I read it and I laughed because it was as politically correct as it gets. But then I asked it, give a Democratic spin.
Yeah.
And it rewrote it.
Wow.
And it just said, give a Democratic spin to question number 6, whatever the question. And they rewrote it. And I just sat there, I shook my head. I'm like, this is unbelievable because it was following that policy.
Yeah.
The applications are limitless. I listened to a podcast where these people are trying to find this person who's missing. And so they took, this person went missing in 2001. So they took old videotapes that are over 20 years old. And they were able to salvage about 7 to 8 minutes worth of real-time audio. They had someone else speak in as a script to have someone's voice to go base off of. They took the video from this home video of this person who went missing, the home video, reapplied it to the person who was talking over, and they were instantly able to go recreate anything.
Yeah.
With the app. I mean, it's limitless.
Yeah.
It's limitless.
Yeah. Also very dangerous.
Oh, dangerous at the same time, too, because there's been a lot of scams to where people are unfortunately falling prey to that because not only can that be used to case, but I've seen videos to where you see prominent celebrities who it's a deep fake to where you could see ABC movie stars saying, hey, help, I'm in trouble. If you don't send me $1,200 in gift cards, I'm going to be stuck here in this country and I can't continue to go film. And for a lot of people who may not have those same tech skills, they might fall prey to that. It's very dangerous.
There's a lesson that you almost have to be skeptical of everything and really test it and making sure that you know what what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because of how good it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk about elections, we're talking about leadership, right? Yeah. And folks that we want to see in leadership, folks that we want our children to look up to, that we can respond well to. So I know you're a big fan of sports, right? You played college tennis. You still compete in a lot of different sports. You really like football. I know that you DVR college and pro football. So what are the qualities that you look for in a leader? And is there a particular coach that you really look up to in that regard?
When Dan Campbell came on the scenes, that just resonated. Of course, the Hard Knocks is that HBO that certainly helped because you see behind the scenes. The second one is Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and these guys have something in common. They have intensity. Yeah. They have commitment. They have commitment to their team. They have commitment to their people. They have discipline, and they're this no nonsense, no game playing, just as straightforward guys.
Right.
That everybody's looking up to.
Right.
And I can tell you, I'm one of the guys that throughout my whole life, I've never really been this rah-rah. Sure. That I remember one of my coaches giving like a speech to get us pumped up, and I'm sitting there going, "This is not doing anything for me." Man. And there's more than just one. I just don't necessarily get into it. And frankly, in tennis, it's not like you're tackling anybody. Okay, you gotta have your mind clear. But when those two guys speak, like they're trying to pump their guys up. I'm like in that chair going, "Oh hell, let's go! Yeah. We got to do this!"
Right.
And one time I was watching ESPN, and Lou Holtz was on, and he had this little segment. What he used to do was college football. They asked him, what pre-game speech would you give to your players?
Yeah.
And he did it. He did it once. I caught it once, and I could not believe how articulate and how well it was put. I could totally sense these guys who going out there just wanted to just murder somebody on that football field. Yeah. And so as I look at that, Mike Tomlin and Dan Campbell, those are the guys, and they just have this strong, focus on.
I'm with you. Dan Campbell. And I think both of them, something in common, I think they'd be considered player coaches, right? Like players want to play for them. They want to perform for these guys. Yeah. Right,
because they've been. I mean, Campbell's been a tight end.
Sure.
So they've been there, and you're absolutely right. And but they're not coddling these guys, but they genuinely. And I've even said it. I mean, you guys heard me talk about it during one of our all employees meeting. They genuinely want their players to be successful,
right?
And they want to put them in the right place. And it's not about them. Yeah, they're selfless. It's about them wanting their players to be successful on the field, and that resonates with people, and I always appreciate that.
Yeah, I love the answer, and the other thing I think they have in common is that they're very high character guys.
Very right. Yeah,
they will. It's not about just can you perform. It's can you perform the right way? Are you doing the right things off the field too? Right? Are you a high character person that can be trusted?
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So Pavel, for those people who want to learn more about yourself, your sport takes, possibly even some of your tennis takes, I know we didn't talk as much about that. How can people get in contact with you?
Well, you go to our website, TriStar. I don't even know what our website is.
TriStarTrust.com, I guess.
Is it TriStarTrust.com?
Just go to Google and type in TriStar Trust and click on the link.
Click on a link, then you go, about us or something, and we have all listed in there with all of our contact information, little bio. So I'm not difficult to find.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. And thank you everyone for listening to or watching another great episode of Mint Money. Please don't forget to follow our podcast so you don't miss when new episodes drop. Thanks, Pavel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.